The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
Welcome in, everyone. Today, we're doing something a little different, something exciting. We're diving deep, really deep, into the world of intelligence agencies. And we've got a ton of declassified documents from, well, the big names, CIA, FBI, MI6. This isn't your typical history lesson, believe me.
Yeah, this is the good stuff. It's like getting a backstage pass to a world that's usually completely off limits. We get to see what really went down, the decisions that shaped, well, everything, really.
Right. It's like cracking open a vault of secrets. And let me tell you, some of the stuff we found is unbelievable. Seriously, truth is stranger than fiction in here.
And the most fascinating part, seeing how these documents turn our understanding of history on its head. Suddenly, you see the hidden hand at play, influencing events in ways you'd never imagine.
Okay, so before we get to the mind-blowing stuff, because trust me, there's a lot, let's lay some groundwork. What exactly is classified information, and how does something go from top secret to declassified?
Right. Got to set the stage. So classified information, it's basically anything deemed too sensitive for public consumption, for national security reasons, foreign relations, protecting intel sources, that kind of thing.
So battle plans, names of undercover agents, things like that. Stuff that could put lives at risk if it fell into the wrong hands.
Exactly. The harm from spilling those secrets, it's got to outweigh the public's right to know. Now, declassification, that's where things get interesting. It happens when the threat's gone, the information's obsolete, no longer a big deal.
Or maybe, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, sometimes enough time's passed that they figure, why not declassify it, right? No harm, no foul.
You got a point. Politics plays a role, no doubt. Declassification, it's a messy process.
Right. For this deep dive, we're sticking mainly to U.S. and U.K. agencies, CIA, MI6. They're the ones everyone's always writing spy novels about.
And their real-life stories are even wilder. Take MI6, for example, Britain's secret intelligence service. They weren't even officially acknowledged until, get this, 1994. That's how secretive they were.
Wow. That's pretty incredible, keeping things under wraps for so long. I mean, they've been around for centuries, right? Protecting British interests all over the globe.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff were they up to in those early days?
Well, let's just say they were resourceful. Their first chief, Mansfield Cumming, they called him C, he had a very unique way of interviewing recruits. He'd pretend to stab himself in the leg with a fake knife.
You're kidding, right? Talk about a high-pressure interview. What were they even trying to accomplish with that?
Nerves of steel. That's what they were looking for. Spying, it's not for the faint of heart. And believe it or not, they actually thought about using, well, semen as invisible ink.
Wait, seriously? That's creative, to say the least. Why on earth did they decide against it?
Well, you can imagine the potential for awkward discoveries, let's just say, plus the logistics. Luckily, they found something a bit less, shall we say, organic.
Thank goodness for small favors. But it does make you think, right? About the ingenuity and the lengths they had to go to in the early days.
Pioneers, no doubt, pushing boundaries even if some of their methods were a bit unorthodox.
Speaking of unorthodox, didn't they have some pretty interesting gadgets too? Even back in World War II.
Oh, absolutely. One of their more, shall we say, explosive inventions was an exploding rat.
An exploding what now?
You heard right, an exploding rat. The plan was to plant them near German artillery, hoping some unsuspecting soldier's curiosity would get the better of them.
Wow. That's something else. Ingenious, but also completely bonkers.
Yeah.
It's amazing what people come up with in war. But speaking of pushing boundaries, maybe we should hop across the pond and talk about the CIA. Those guys practically wrote the book on covert operations.
Oh, absolutely. And trust me, their story is full of just as many surprises, intrigue, ethical quandaries, you name it. For instance, you've heard of the heart attack gun, right?
You mean the real-life gadget? The one that fired poison darts that couldn't be traced?
Yeah.
Straight out of a spy movie?
Oh, it's real, and it's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's amazing. And a little terrifying, the lengths they went to. But what about their actual operations? What were they trying to accomplish, especially during the Cold War?
Well, gathering intel on the Soviet Union and their allies was a huge priority. It was a battle of ideologies, a fight for global dominance, and information was the deadliest weapon. They explored a lot of avenues, some more successful than others. Ever heard of Operation Acoustic Kitty?
Wait, that was the whole cat spy thing, right? They were trying to turn cats into, like, furry little secret agents.
You got it. They surgically implanted listening devices into cats, hoping to use them to eavesdrop on the Soviets.
And how'd that go? I can't imagine training a cat to be a spy is very easy.
Let's just say it didn't exactly go according to plan. Turns out cats are a little difficult to control.
I would imagine so. Poor kitties. They really swung for the fences with that one. But something tells me that's not the only weird thing they tried, right? What other interesting tidbits did you find in those declassified files?
Let's put it this way. Their attempts to deal with Fidel Castro's Cuba, let's just say they were very creative. We're talking exploding seashells.
Exploding what? Okay, you're messing with me.
Oh, totally serious.
Seriously?
Exploding seashells. It was just one of many, shall we say, unique methods they explored to try and, well, deal with Castro. Poisoned cigars, a booby-trapped scuba suit. They even considered recruiting people from his inner circle for a coup.
Sounds like they were willing to try just about anything to take Castro down. Makes you wonder just how far they were willing to go.
It's a good question, and it raises some pretty big ethical questions about covert ops, right? Where's the line between gathering intel and, well, crossing the line?
It's a slippery slope, that's for sure. And speaking of ethical dilemmas, we can't forget about MKUltra, the CIA's infamous mind control program. Just the name sends chills down my spine.
Yeah, MKUltra is a dark chapter, for sure. A stark reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. We're talking LSD, hypnosis, all kinds of experiments, often on people who didn't even know they were participating.
It's truly chilling stuff. It really makes you question how far they were willing to go.
It's a dark reminder that oversight and accountability are absolutely crucial, especially when it comes to national security. But maybe we should shift gears a bit. Focus on an agency a little closer to home for you, the FBI. They were tasked with protecting the U.S. from within its own borders, which, as you can imagine, came with its own set of challenges.
And their history is just as complicated, right? They've had their share of both wins and scandals, particularly under J. Edgar Hoover. Didn't he basically run the FBI like his own personal kingdom for decades?
Pretty much. Hoover was, well, a complicated figure. He built the FBI into this powerful force, but his methods, let's just say he blurred the lines between law enforcement and playing politics. He was obsessed with communists, subversives, anyone he saw as a threat.
The FBI under Hoover, it's like something out of a film noir, with the fedoras and cigarettes.
Perfect comparison. One of the most troubling chapters in their history has to be COINTELPRO. This program, it targeted anyone the FBI considered subversive. And we're not just talking about suspects, we're talking civil rights groups, activists, even political opponents.
I remember reading about this. They infiltrated these groups, spread lies, even instigated violence to make them look bad and turn people against them.
You got it. They did some pretty messed up stuff. One of the most disturbing examples has to be the letter they sent to Martin Luther King Jr. urging him to commit suicide.
That's just awful. It's hard to believe an organization tasked with upholding the law would stoop so low.
It's a dark mark on their history, no doubt. And it raises a lot of questions about the balance between national security and basic human rights that we're still grappling with today.
Makes you wonder, what else is buried in those files? What other uncomfortable truths are waiting to be uncovered?
That's the thing about the truth. It has a way of coming out, even if it takes decades, centuries even. These declassified files, they give us a glimpse into a world that was hidden from view, forcing us to confront the realities of power, secrecy, and the choices made in the name of keeping us safe.
It's a lot to process. But before we get too bogged down, maybe we need a little palate cleanser. What do you say we lighten things up with some of the weirder, more outlandish stories for the world of intelligence?
I'm all for a bit of levity. Trust me, espionage is full of you can't be serious moments. For example, did you know the CIA dabbled in the world of abstract art?
Wait, what? The CIA and art. Now that's a connection I never would have made.
Sounds strange, right? But during the Cold War, they were secretly funding these art exhibitions, promoting American abstract expressionists, Jack and Pollock, Mark Rothko, those guys.
So instead of planting spies, they were planting paintings. What was the strategy there?
Oh, it was definitely strategic. They saw abstract expressionism with its focus on individual creativity, freedom, as a counterpoint to the Soviet Union's, well, more rigid state-controlled art scene. It was a way to subtly spread American ideals, a kind of undercover cultural diplomacy.
Wow, so they were basically weaponizing art.
Yeah.
That's both clever and kind of creepy. Makes you think twice about all those art movements throughout history, right?
Absolutely. It shows you the many ways these agencies work behind the scenes to shape how people think. And speaking of unexpected connections, let's talk about Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl, as in the guy who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What's he got to do with any of this?
Believe it or not, he was an intelligence asset for MI6 during World War II. His wartime experiences, especially as a fighter pilot, gave him a unique perspective and connections.
Wow, never would have guessed that. I guess truth really is stranger than fiction. You never know who might be a secret agent. Did he ever use his writing as a cover? Do we know?
There's been some speculation, but nothing concrete. But he certainly had a knack for weaving suspense and intrigue into his stories, for kids and adults alike.
I'm never going to look at James and the Giant Peach the same way again. Okay, so exploding rats, pigeon cameras, artist propaganda. Seems like nothing was off the table. But there's a serious side to all of this, right? Real lives were affected, sometimes tragically so.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in the more exciting side of things, but we can't forget the human cost. These operations weren't just games. They had very real consequences for everyone involved, the agents, the people they targeted, innocent bystanders.
Yeah, we hear about the spies, the James Bonds, but what about the scientists, the analysts, the code breakers, the people behind the curtain, and what about the regular people who got caught in the middle of these operations?
Exactly. Their stories often get lost, but they matter just as much. These were real people, families, dreams, fears. Take the tragic case of Frank Olson, for example.
Frank Olson. I don't recognize that name.
He was a biowarfare expert working with the CIA on MKUltra, the weaponization of biological agents. In 1953, he died under very suspicious circumstances. Officially, it was suicide, a fall from a hotel window, but many believe he was silenced because he knew too much about MKUltra.
It's chilling. Sounds like something straight out of a spy thriller. But this was someone's life. Really makes you realize the stakes.
It raises important questions about accountability and transparency within these agencies. When secrecy is paramount, it can be hard to get to the bottom of things.
It really underscores the weight of these decisions, the potential for unintended consequences.
And these ethical dilemmas, they haven't gone away, not with the rise of technology. We're more connected than ever, which means more information, more surveillance, and a whole new set of challenges.
Right. Technology is a double-edged sword. We have access to more information than ever, but it also means more ways to track and monitor us, both by governments and corporations. It's like privacy is this increasingly precious commodity.
And there's a big debate about finding that balance, security versus privacy. It's a question that's going to keep popping up as technology keeps evolving at this crazy pace. But maybe, for now, we can put a pin in the philosophical stuff and talk about another fascinating chapter in intelligence history. Have you ever heard of the Stasi?
The Stasi. Yeah, that rings a bell. Weren't they the East German secret police? The ones infamous for their, ruthless tactics and surveillance?
Exactly. During the Cold War, the Stasi, they were all about control, monitoring citizens, rooting out dissent, maintaining the communist regime's power no matter the cost.
Didn't they have informants everywhere, even within families?
You heard right. They created this environment where people were encouraged to report on each other, even for the smallest things. Children on their parents, neighbors on neighbors. It was all about creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion, ensuring that nobody felt safe to speak their mind.
It's hard to fathom living under that kind of pressure, constantly looking over your shoulder.
It's a testament to the human spirit that people found ways to resist, to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But the Stasi, they were masters of surveillance. Hidden cameras, microphones, psychological manipulation, you name it, they used it. They kept these incredibly detailed files on millions of people, a chilling reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked.
It's just, wow, what happened to all those files when the Berlin Wall fell?
Well, when East Germany collapsed in '89, people stormed the Stasi headquarters, determined to expose their secrets. And what they found was astonishing. Millions of pages of documents, photos, audio recordings. It was like this treasure trove of information, revealing the true extent of their surveillance.
It must have been overwhelming, both for the people whose lives were laid bare and for those trying to make sense of it all. What about the people who worked for the Stasi? Were they ever held accountable?
It's complicated. Some high-ranking officials, yeah, they faced trial for human rights abuses, but many they blended back into society. The process of dealing with their legacy, seeking justice for the victims, it's still ongoing. Shows you how long it can take to heal the wounds of the past.
Yeah, it's a long road. Makes you think about the ripples these agencies create, the long-lasting impact of their actions.
Definitely. Espionage, it's full of these gray areas, situations where right and wrong aren't always clear. Looking at these declassified files, we're forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about power, the limits of secrecy, and how we balance security with basic freedoms.
It's a lot to unpack. But before we dive into those deeper philosophical questions, maybe we can lighten the mood again. What do you say? Another detour into the world of, you've got to be kidding me, stories from the intelligence world.
Always up for a good laugh. Let's hear it.
Okay, so Get this, psychic spies? I know, it sounds like something out of a movie. But it's true, right? The U.S. and the Soviet Union, they both poured resources into psychic research during the Cold War.
Stranger than fiction, right? They were dead serious about it. Remote viewing, telepathy, the whole 9 yards. They wanted to weaponize ESP, use it for intelligence gathering. Imagine that psychic spies reading minds across continents, seeing the future of global politics.
They were basically trying to create real-life X-Men. Did it work? Were there any, genuine psychic spies?
Well, let's just say the results were a bit underwhelming. A few people claim to have the gift, and there's some wild stories floating around, but nothing concrete, no real scientific proof that ESP works, let alone that you could use it for espionage.
So all that money and effort for basically nothing.
Pretty much. But it does give you a sense of the Cold War mentality. They were so desperate for an edge that they were willing to try anything, no matter how far-fetched.
Talk about thinking outside the box. But we should remember, behind every wacky experiment, every failed operation, there were real people involved, people who risked their lives, sometimes lost their lives.
You're right. We can't lose sight of that. These weren't just games. These were life-or-death situations.
It's like you were saying earlier with Frank Olson, the biowarfare expert.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many other stories are hidden in those files, how many lives were touched by the actions of these agencies.
Exactly. The history of espionage, it's full of untold stories, of triumphs and tragedies, of moral ambiguities. And as more documents come to light, we gain a better understanding of the true cost of these operations.
It's a lot to take in, but it's an important conversation to have. These agencies, they play a crucial role in keeping us safe, but their actions have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely. We need to be able to talk about these things openly, to hold them accountable.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of tough conversations, I think it's time we addressed one of the most controversial topics in the world of espionage: assassination attempts. We talked about the CIA's attempts on Castro, but those were just a drop in the ocean, right? Assassination, it's been a tool in the shadows for centuries.
You're right. Throughout history, governments have used covert means to eliminate their enemies, whether it's foreign leaders, political rivals, or even their own citizens. And these operations, they're usually shrouded in secrecy, making it incredibly difficult to uncover the truth.
It's a murky world, ethically speaking. I mean, when, if ever, is it okay for a government to order the assassination of another leader? And what kind of message does that send to the world?
These are questions that people have been wrestling with for ages. There are no easy answers.
It feels like a dangerous path to go down. Once you start down that road, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. It undermines the rule of law and creates a climate of fear and uncertainty.
Not to mention the potential for blowback. Even if an assassination is successful, it can backfire spectacularly.
Absolutely. History's full of examples of assassinations that achieve the opposite of their intended goal, sparking wars, destabilizing regions, creating power vacuums that even more dangerous actors are all too happy to fill.
A good reminder that violence, even when it's covert, is rarely the answer. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Well said. But even with the risks, even with the ethical dilemmas, assassination attempts are still part of the landscape of espionage, even in this day and age.
It's a sobering thought. It makes you think about the future of intelligence gathering, the challenges we're facing in a world where technology is advancing so rapidly.
That's something we'll be digging into in our next section, as we explore the world of modern espionage and the challenges of maintaining national security in the digital age. Cyber warfare, drones, the ethical dilemmas of these new tools. We've got a lot to cover.
It's both fascinating and a little frightening to think about. But before we get ahead of ourselves, maybe we should wrap up our discussion of some of the, shall we say, more unorthodox methods used by intelligence agencies in the past.
A little levity before we dive back into the deep end. I like it. What do you have in mind?
How about this, the time the CIA tried to use a chimpanzee as a spy?
You're kidding.
Nope, totally serious. They spent serious time and money training this chimp. I think his name was Ham, to carry out missions. They figured, hey, chimps are smart, they can mimic human behavior, perfect for undercover work.
I can only imagine the training sessions. So, did it work? Was Ham the next 007?
Let's just say Ham's career as a secret agent was short-lived. Turns out training a chimp to follow complex instructions, especially under pressure, is a tad more challenging than they anticipated.
You think? That sounds like something out of a comedy sketch, not a top-secret intelligence operation.
It does, doesn't it?
No.
I guess even in the world of espionage, you've got to laugh sometimes. But for every wacky experiment, every failed operation, there were also moments of incredible courage ingenuity, and sacrifice. We can't forget about the human beings behind it all.
Absolutely. As we delve deeper into these declassified documents, we're not just uncovering events, we're uncovering stories, motivations, the complexities of human nature. It's a reminder that the world of intelligence, it's not just about gadgets and secret missions, it's about people.
Well said. We'll be back in a bit to continue our deep dive into the world of intelligence and espionage. Welcome back, everyone. Ready to jump back into the world of intelligence? This time we're taking it to the 21st century. Obviously, things have changed a lot since the days of exploding rats and chimpanzee spies. We're talking cutting-edge tech, cyber warfare, the whole 9 yards.
You got it. Forget trench coats and shadowy meetings today. It's all about algorithms, satellites, and hacking.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. What are some of the biggest game changers you've seen in the world of espionage since the year 2000?
Cyber espionage, definitely. It's become the weapon of choice for a lot of governments and other groups, stealing secrets, causing mayhem, disrupting infrastructure, you name it. They can do it from behind a keyboard.
Yeah, those headlines about data breaches and cyber attacks, it's like a daily occurrence now. No one seems to be immune.
And the scary part is, the impact is real. Imagine a hostile nation shutting down a country's power grid or messing with their financial systems. Chaos.
It's a chilling thought. And it's not even just about stealing information anymore, right? You can influence elections, mess with entire populations, even cripple a country's defenses, all without firing a single bullet.
Exactly. It's a completely new battlefield with a whole new set of rules, or lack thereof.
It's like the line between peace and war is getting blurrier by the day. What are some of the ethical challenges that come with these new technologies and strategies?
One big one is the issue of accountability. It's hard to pinpoint who's behind these attacks. Is it a government, a lone wolf hacker, a group with an axe to grind? It's tough to say.
And even when you can figure out who did it, what then? How do you hold them responsible? The laws are playing catch-up with the technology.
You said it. The whole international community is trying to figure out how to navigate this new world, establish some ground rules for cyberspace. It's a constant work in progress.
It's a whole new world of challenges. And we can't forget about drones either. They've changed the game when it comes to intelligence gathering and, well, taking out targets.
Absolutely. Drones have been a game changer for intelligence gathering. They can loiter for ages, provide constant surveillance, all without putting a pilot in harm's way.
Right. But there's also a dark side, isn't there? Drone strikes. Lots of ethical debates about those.
Absolutely. They've been criticized for causing civilian casualties and creating a lot of fear and resentment among people who live in the areas where they're used. And then there's the lack of transparency, the difficulty in holding anyone accountable for what happens.
It feels like we're stepping into this new era of warfare, where the lines are blurry and the potential for unintended consequences is huge.
It's a really complex issue, and there are no easy answers. As technology advances, we're going to be grappling with these ethical questions more and more.
It really makes you think. We've uncovered so much in this deep dive. The secrets, the intrigue, the moral gray areas. We've seen humanity at its best and worst, from incredible acts of courage to chilling examples of cruelty.
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. As we wrap things up, I think the most important takeaway is that the world of intelligence isn't black and white. It's a world of shadows, where right and wrong are often tangled up. And as technology keeps evolving at this crazy pace, those ethical dilemmas are only going to get more complicated.
You're absolutely right. It's on all of us to stay informed, ask the tough questions, demand accountability from those in power, because the decisions they make, the actions they take, they impact all of us. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of intelligence agencies. We've covered a lot of ground, the history, the evolution, the challenges of the 21st century. Hopefully this has given you a new perspective on the hidden forces that shape our world and the importance of staying vigilant, asking questions, and never taking anything for granted. Thanks for joining us.